hope, help, and healing. With a hint of humor, HASHIMOTO'S.healing.com. Hey people, I'm Mark Ryan, licensed acupuncturist and herbalist from HASHIMOTO'S.healing.com. Has this ever happened to you? Do you forget appointments, lose your keys like all the time, several times a day? Or do you forget the names of people or pets you know, like names you shouldn't forget? I was speaking with a man with Hashimoto's last week, and he was concerned because he had recently forgotten the name of his 13-year-old dog. And he's had this dog its entire life, for 13 years, and he forgot his name. Or about this, do you ever have problems concentrating or find that certain mental activities just exhaust you? Is it affecting you at work? Do you worry about keeping your job? I was speaking with another woman the other day, she also has Hashimoto's, and she told me, I feel like there's a smart person inside me who can't get out. That describes it perfectly. All of these things are symptoms of something going on with your brain. And this is directly caused by Hashimoto's. This is not coincidence. This is an area that I'm really passionate about. And the reason is that this is an area that almost no one talks about or does anything about. And I'm totally baffled by this. Now, to me, this is arguably one of the most important things to treat. If you lose your brain, everything else is gone. Forget about having any decent quality of life. You are done. Right? Something that most people don't realize is that many of the most common symptoms of Hashimoto's are brain related. Right? Some of these things are like brain fog and memory loss. Others less so, like depression, neurological disorders. Things can look a lot like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And regardless of how obvious they are, all of these brain-related symptoms are a sign of degeneration of the brain. No bueno. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In adults, thyroid hormone has been shown to have a major influence on virtually every brain activity. T3 and T4 are involved in the formation of neurons, neural migration, axonal and dendritic growth. These are different kinds of nerve fibers, myelination, other things. They're responsible for the growth and activity of nerves, and that's what the brain's made of. Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism can lead to various disorders, including lethargy, slow reflexes, poor motor coordination. It's also been linked to bipolar disorders, depression, loss of cognitive function, especially in the elderly. And in the most extreme cases, Hashimoto's has been shown in a condition called Hashimoto's encephalopathy, which causes severe changes in the brain that look very much like the destruction that Alzheimer's causes. Look, here's a picture of an MRI with someone with Hashimoto's encephalopathy. You see all that white stuff? That's plaque. That replaces brain tissue, and it does not work at all. It's like having pudding in your head instead of a brain. Not good. The brain actually loses massive amounts of brain tissue with Hashimoto's encephalopathy. And thyroid hormone has a very powerful effect on the brain. And hypothyroidism and brain inflammation can cause very serious and lasting damage to the brain. One of the most common symptoms we've all heard of with Hashimoto's is brain fog. It's that feeling like we were just talking about. Like you can't quite focus or concentrate no matter how hard you try, right? The smart person can't get out. Well, brain fog is actually an indication of inflammation in your brain. Immune cells in the brain called microglia are responsible for this. These are the cells responsible for causing Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's, cardiovascular disease, and lots more things. And these cells also respond quickly to pathogens and injury, and they accumulate in places where there's degeneration. And they produce a whole variety of pro-inflammatory molecules. That's right, they cause inflammation. Well, thyroid hormone has a major influence on them. It can keep them calm and it can modulate them. This is why some people with Hashimoto's notice that their brain fog really improves when they're given thyroid hormone. But for many others, this doesn't help at all. And if this is the case, then there's something else driving this inflammation and this immune attack. Another common symptom for people with Hashimoto's is fatigue. And in many cases, this is also being caused by the same brain inflammation. So if you have fatigue when you read, when you drive, when you have long conversations, this is brain-based fatigue. And you can't get brain endurance back unless you support your brain. At this point, it's not simply a thyroid hormone problem anymore. And the thing to realize is this is inflammation. And all that fatigue may be caused by an autoimmune response. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the usual suspects that cause this. One is gluten, the other is leaky gut. Together, they equal leaky brain and brain inflammation. A protein found in connection with gluten consumption called zonulin is linked to leaky gut. That's intestinal permeability. The very thing that commonly leads to antibody reactions to foods, which leads to sensitivities and allergies, and even eventually to things like Hashimoto's. There's a direct link between the inflammation in the gut, the result of these compounds getting into the bloodstream and into the brain, and brain degeneration, the breakdown of brain cells. And if you have leaky gut, you may also have leaky brain. These same proteins are found in the blood-brain barrier. They sometimes also break down in the brain. In order to improve this brain fog, you have to reduce brain inflammation and heal the barrier systems. Because when things enter the brain that shouldn't, the microglia respond, and if that response is severe, the tissue around it can be collateral damage. The microglia cells also make up the blood-brain barrier. This is a thin barrier that lines the brain and allows only tiny necessary substances to pass through. Well, the blood-brain barrier is important for keeping the bad guys out. Things like bacteria and viruses, environmental toxins. But unfortunately, according to Dr. Datis Karazian, the author of the new book, Why Isn't My Brain Working?, the blood-brain barrier develops these leaks for many different reasons. And some of these include blood sugar problems, particularly of insulin resistance, chronic stress, chronic inflammation, poor gut health, poor diet with unhealthy fats, and out-of-control autoimmunity. The Hashimoto's is just not being managed. Autoimmune attack on parts of the brain has also been noted with Hashimoto's patients. One part of the brain that's been observed to be vulnerable is the cerebellum. As it turns out, research has also shown that gluten can lead to destruction of the cerebellum. Coincidence? You decide. Okay, we just talked about the immune system in the brain. Well, one thing that's important to understand is that it has no off switch. If there's an immune response in the brain, there is nothing to call off the attack. And the microglial cells create brain inflammation and chew up brain tissue in the process.
Hope, help, and healing. With a hint of humor, HASHIMOTO'S healing.com.